What's up, guys? Sub-Zeric here, back for not a VOD review. Today we're gonna be going over into the Arcane Learnings article. Riot posts these every single set, basically at the end of the set, and talks through all of the stuff that happened in the set, the stuff that was unbalanced, the stuff that was controversial, yeah, the good stuff, the bad stuff, everything. So yeah, I'm gonna kind of like read through. I'm gonna summarize the article essentially. I'm not gonna like read through every single little bit. I'm gonna put up a VOD while I talk through it. But yeah, I'm honestly just gonna go section by section and yap through it. And we got a Michael VOD to watch while I oh, okay, I think we're still good. Yeah, until I talk through it. Sorry, I'm also concurrently downloading another VOD. Look, I'm going on vacation starting Wednesday. So I'm pre-recording a bunch of content. So I don't know when this VOD, this might get posted sooner rather than later. I don't know. But in any case, all right, so the article, I'm just gonna go section by section. They also do kind of like reveal some stuff in the article about, next set 14, which I know a lot of people are obviously really hyped for. We're getting near the end of set 13, which is bittersweet because set 13, well, we'll talk about the article, but I think it's been really good. But okay, so first, how did Arcane land as a set? They talked about the fact that they, created all these new unique champions, or what do we call them in TFT? Units, for this set. I think those landed fantastically, but it is obviously a lot of work. Riot kind of is putting themselves into this sort of cycle, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, where they're doing, 3 full sets a year. And so like the third set every year is the set where there is a LAN for it, like the Macau Open, the Vegas Open, the Paris Open eventually. And it's also the one that they invest into the most. They haven't really like said this out loud, but I mean, it seems, I think it's pretty obvious to most people who play TFT, Remix Rumble, they put all that, all those resources into the music being really good. The balance was really solid. Just, making a really polished set that people are going to like a lot. And then also, obviously, the Arcane set, really popular. A lot of work put into that as well. So, it seems like every 3 sets they have their like really polished set where they're putting more effort than the other sets into it to get a set that's really consequential for the release of Arcane. Obviously, you want a very popular set because that's when a ton of eyes are going to be on TFT. And I don't really have an issue. They don't have any of this in the article, but I think it's interesting to talk about. I don't really have an issue with that approach to TFT. It does mean that it's a little bit awkward. The kind of sets in between they talk about sometimes. Well, I think the community sometimes talks about the idea of like sacking a set where, like sometimes, one set will like clearly be like less work is put into it. There's some kind of like glaring issues during, some of the sets that aren't these like super polished sets. And, I still think those sets have been very solid. I think, there were definitely issues with 11 and 12, but, overall pretty fun sets. I mean, I really enjoyed 12. But yeah, outside of that, they kind of talk about how, Arcane was obviously a big release. They did kind of have the weirdness of having to add 6 costs through the sets. I feel like maybe a lot of people even forgot about that at this point, but the set did not release with 6 costs. The set released with just all the base champions, and then further on into the set they added 6 costs because they didn't want to spoil Mel or Victor's kind of like transformations in Arcane. And honestly, I think that was a really good approach to it. It meant that they could hold space in the set for these like really cool 6 cost units that are based on the lore and have that really cool like, oh my god, I hit Mel from Arcane, bat chest. But they also weren't obviously they couldn't have put them earlier into the set because they would have spoiled it. So yeah, I think honestly I was completely fine with that. And speaking of 6 costs, their next session is on 6 costs and just kind of how 6 costs existed in the set. I think this is Probably the most controversial part of this set. TFT players like to complain. I don't think there will be a set that goes by in TFT history where TFT players are gonna, complain 0% about something in the set. A set that's like, everyone's just like, yeah, this set is like perfect and great. And this was a set, and we'll get to it a little bit further on. But it was a set with a ton of like comps viable. It was a very, very balanced set. And that meant that, you can't really complain about balance. Honestly, they have a section on balance, right? Because we can kind of, actually, do they have this section on balance? No, I guess I can just talk about that here. Just overall balance. Because I would say that this has been the most balanced set in a very, very, very long time. I think it's really hard to argue against that idea. So much of the set, there were certainly patches where, some lines were way stronger than others, but those were very, very quickly patched. There were obviously patches where, not every single line was viable, but if that is your frame of reference, and like the only time you're gonna be happy is if every single line is viable, then you're never gonna be happy. That's just how it is. So I think overall, like a very, very balanced set. And I think a few things from that. One, it's a good thing, I think, overall for TFT to have balanced sets where you can play a bunch of different lines. But it's actually not that straightforward. There are a lot of people who, talk through the set and they're kind of like, well, it gets kind of boring when everything's balanced. For my content specifically, it's kind of funny though. I get a lot of viewership when there is like a broken comp. If there's like a new broken reroll comp that comes out, if they like completely swing wrong on the balance, I'll put out a video being like, Riot, this reroll comp is broken, and people love watching that kind of stuff. And I think people, the viewership is obviously something that I look at because, this is something that I do and I like when the videos get more views. But it's also kind of a proxy for, people's engagement. If the meta is super, super balanced and not really changing a lot, then people are a little bit less engaged. But I do think it does make for a better game. And so I'm fine with that kind of like trade-off there, where the game is just better. There is a ton of balance. Tear off Carousel is interesting. Are we just going like Vow here to play for Vander item? I mean, maybe. But yeah, like the game being more balanced, I do think is just, I think, for the health of the game, it is a good thing. Not having like really, really rough patches where it feels like you can only play like a few lines. Like, I think that's more fun, honestly. And I think that's true for a lot of people, but not everybody. There are definitely people who are like, I want to, play the really, really broken stuff. I have always said, like the most memorable patches in TFT are the broken patches. Remember like the Legends Draven patch where everybody took the Draven Legend, took like Spoils of War every single game, and just like every single game was won by 3-star 4 cost. Or, like the Dragonmancer, like Nunu type patches where everybody is playing for this, or everyone's trying to get this like +1, and if they get this +1, the line is like absolutely disgusting. Those are really memorable patches, and I do think like balance needs to be adjusted. But like if we have that patch for a little while, it's not necessarily it's kind of fun. It's fun and memorable. It just can't last for a long time. People hated like the Syndra patch that was like the start of the set 12, right? I always set 11, set 12. Like once we're past a set, I'd kind of like forget about it. But yeah, people just like hate patches like that where, you go it was like 3 weeks long because it was during like a break, I think. And we were just stuck in this meta of everybody had to play for Syndra. And so I think people don't like it when those patches tend to, last a really, really long time. And that's completely understandable, and I get it. So yeah, all of that being said, I guess the other piece of it is the 6 cost balance, because that's what the sort of section started off on. 6 cost balance this set, obviously Victor on release was a monster, just completely unreasonable. Warwick was a monster on like after a little bit, after they buffed him up a bit, and people were like, oh my god, like they actually realized like, wait, this Warwick unit is kind of insane. And so I do think the 6 cost balance it wasn't perfect. It wasn't great, I would say. But I feel like the bigger issue, and they do acknowledge this in the article, is just that there's not really any agency to getting a 6 cost. You take a 6 cost off of a shop, you just randomly get a 6 cost in shop, and then boom, you're really, really happy. And the fact that there is no kind of like agency in getting a 6 cost, it's just random chance. The only thing you can do is potentially push level 10 or have some more gold. And TFT at its core is a game that is about randomness. If you randomly high roll a 4 cost that you want for your comp, I mean, that's life. But 6 cost really push that to the edge, where if you get a Victor during stage 5, that might be the difference, especially early like versions of Victor. That hitting that Victor increases your top 4 rate and your win rate drastically. And I think that's a perfectly fair point. I do think it certainly is a trade-off though, because they wanted the 6 cost to be really impactful, to be really exciting to hit them. But I do think it probably missed the mark a little bit on just the fact that there was no real way to like increase your odds of hitting 6 cost. You want TFT to be a game based on randomness, but a game where if you don't have a lot of econ, or you have the ability to push levels and things like that, you increase your odds of hitting these things, and then you have that kind of skill expression where, okay, I hit a 6 cost here, and like I feel really good about it because I hit it because you hit 6 cost if you're higher HP or something, and I saved HP. Obviously the hard part is there's no obvious answer to it. They talk about in the article, but if you just made it based on level, then all the reroll players then can never hit 6 cost, and then that devalues reroll. So there's not an easy answer, but I mean, Riot Games is good at finding hard fixes for not easy problems. And this was a situation where it definitely felt like 6 cost were a little bit inelegant, but I still think quite fun. I still was really excited whenever I saw a Victor or Warwick or whatever in my shop. So, not the end of the world, I would say, but definitely probably like the biggest pain point for people this set. The other thing, I guess, to yap about, the other set mechanic is anomalies. They said anomalies were a pretty successful set mechanic, especially after the first few patches, because if you guys remember early on in the set, you could basically get a specific anomaly every single game if you wanted it, which is, kind of crazy thinking back on it. And what's even crazier is, when they made the change, I was like, man, I really like the fact that you can play for a specific anomaly because it allows you to do stuff like the Hungry for Power Urgot build. Like the fact that that was enabled by looking for specific anomalies was really cool in my opinion. But I mean, the more that we got further into the set, the more I realized like, okay, Riot Games' approach to this was correct. You don't really want anomalies to be able to look for specific anomalies every game, because it just devolves into like certain lines become only viable if you get this anomaly, and then you have to tailor for the specific, like, I mean, not even tailor, you have to just roll down for the specific anomaly. Sometimes you hit it on the first 3 rolls, sometimes it takes you 40 gold to find the anomaly, and that difference between the two is not really very acceptable. So I think they took the right approach on that. It did feel a little, sad to lose the fact that, there were the kind of like Hungry for Power type anomalies that ended up like, that don't exist and that we couldn't really play for. But I think at the end of the day, it was a good change. And then just Anomaly altogether as a set mechanic, they say it's somewhere in here. Yes. Our goal as set mechanics has changed from the past few sets. Let's call this time period the post-Augments era. TFT is already a complicated game, so since Gizmos and Gadgets, we've been keeping mechanics smaller in scope and more tied to the thematic. I think this is a great space for set mechanic to be in. I've talked about this before. Set mechanics, I think, they just need to be a little sprinkle. They just need to be a little spice on top of the set. Also, wow, we kind of nailed that anti-Zephyr tech, though we actually 50-50 that it ended up there. But yeah, just a little bit of spice on top of the set, I think, is what set mechanics should be. Because like they say, TFT is great at its core, just the game of TFT, I think a lot of people love. And so you don't really need there to be this like crazy set mechanic that changes the game. A lot of people did not really like the fact that, some encounters made the game like way, in set 11 that was, right? That, encounters just completely shifted the game. And, other things like dragons, but that's a very far back example. How many people, let me know in the comments if you were playing when dragons were in TFT, or hero augments was another just completely game shifting mechanic that you were forced to play around, and it just shifted how the entire game was played. People do not like that, and I think it's good that we're moving away from that kind of thing, that we're just, it's a little sprinkle on the set. And I think anomalies were great in that. I think anomalies were really cool. The transformational aspect of anomalies were cool. Yeah, I think they really honestly knocked it out of the park with anomalies. And so great set mechanic, A+ to Riot Games, in my opinion, on that one. Augment design. So they talk about a few things. Silver augments for hero augments now. I think we're overall pretty good. We definitely did not have a patch where everyone was like, oh my god, every game people are just trying to hard force like trolling as their setup. So, you know, I do think they nailed that pretty hard. And, you know, the one that I think a lot of people had complaints about was, you know, the gold one, the Vander one, where at least he was 2 cost. So, you know, it's like a little bit harder. But yeah, I think they did a pretty good job of hero augments. And a lot of people, I think, had the take, you know, when we were in the really broken dredges of hero augments, when there was the Garen champion one that was like super broken and stuff like that, and there was another 1-cost one that was broken that set. I'm trying to remember what it was. You guys will remind me in the comments. But you know, like as we when we were in those patches, some people were like, you can't balance your augments. They're unbalanceable just because of the way they work. And I think Riot has proved that that's not true, that hero augments are certainly balanceable. They're difficult to balance, but with this idea of them being slightly lower power, I do think the odds of the ability to balance them has gone up a lot, and I think that is a good thing. I think they've done a good job with that. So I think they nailed that. Glemify and Dumbify, I think, was pretty fun. Definitely on release a bit weak, but they actually got them to a good spot where Glemify and Dumbify, if you know how to play them, they're really exciting. And I think that's exactly what augments should be. Really exciting, really strong if you understand how to pilot them. Not you know, like auto pick. You know, you don't want augments ever to really be auto pick, but if you're in a good spot for it, you know, really transformational. I think that's augments at their best. So I think they nailed that. Team up augments, I think were really cool. They talked about the fact that like you kind of have to make them weak in general because they're giving you, you know, 5 costs and 4 costs and things like this, which, you know, is fair, but I thought they were fun. You know, I was always excited to get some of the cool team up augments, though it definitely did feel like their effects were a little bit, you know, underwhelming. So that's the only downside to them, but, you know, I don't hate it. And then 6 cost augments as well were pretty underwhelming, and they say that, but once again, I think they're fun. I bet the pick rates for them is relatively high for like casual players, which, you know, makes a lot of sense. They are very fun to play around, and you know, the idea that you can get a 6 cost is crazy. So I think they're cool in that respect. All right, next section. I think we only have a couple more. No, 3 more, I think. Opening encounters. If you guys, you know, played previous sets, we used to have portals that started off the game. You got to, you know, kind of like stand in a portal and pick what you wanted to start the game with. Now we have this opening encounter thing where it's just everybody, it picks an encounter to start the game with, you know, Vi, where you get 2 component anvils, or, you know, trainer golems, where you get all the golems and stuff like that. I trust Riot when they say that this was an issue for casual players. You know, it's weird to me. And we probably have to go into another Michael game. Let's just jump back randomly into the VOD here. Boom, we're here. We'll watch. Man, wait, this is the same game. The VOD wasn't that long. All right, let's jump to. Sure. Like, no, this is the game we actually watched from him the other day. All right, let's check out this VOD then, because I have a few more words to say. We got somewhere in the article. I always run long on these type of videos. I mean, how long have I been recording for? 17 minutes already. I'll try to finish it before like 25. But yeah. I trust Riot when they say that this was an issue for new players, where there was just kind of this like really this kind of informational overload, right? If you've never played TFT before and it's like the game's like, okay, look at these 3 portals and then read them and then stand in them, I do think that can be kind of overwhelming for people. I could see that possibility of it being overwhelming for people. So, you know, I don't mind them getting kind of like dumbed down a little bit and being made into opening encounters. I do think some people are upset about that because, you know, if you're in tournament and you get Warwick encounter into Warwick encounter, you know, there is already a decent amount of variance in TFT, but that actually, like, your placement is a lot more random when you're in Warwick encounter, just because if you high roll your opener, all of a sudden your ability to play the game is so much better than, you know, somebody who just low rolls their opener, and there's nothing you can do about that, right? In a normal game, you can just say, okay, fine, I'll lost streak. In a Warwick's hunger encounter, you can't do that, because if you lost streak, you're just going to lose the game. You're going to kill 0 units and your game's going to be over. And they addressed that. They said opening encounters that dramatically shift the core way you play TFT should probably not exist. Here referring to Warwick's Hunger. They also say to an extent Mbessa, the Wandering Golem encounter, but I think they realized that one is so fun for a lot of people, casuals and competitives, that, you know, you still, they're still going to keep that one in the game because it's just so fun. Whereas Warwick's, it's fun to some degree, but not so fun that it makes it up for the fact that it like can kind of destroy a game for a competitive player. So I think they realize the kind of issues with encounters. I think honestly, not. I'm completely down with them just making them a little bit less crazy in some of the crazy spots. I do think also just like competitive TFT players do have to just realize that like this is a game of variance, and like there is more that can be done, but you know they're not going to remove every single portal that has variance. You know there was that like famous. Not really famous at all. This is very insular to the TFT community, but a tweet by, I forget who it was, but somebody who was like, every single portal I played was like a for fun portal. And like Mort was like, okay, what are the for fun portals? And they were like, you know, I got a Trainer Golem, I got a Warwick one, I got like an Orin artifact one, I got like a gold subscription one or something like that. And Mort was like, okay, then what are the ones that aren't for fun? And they were like, component anvils, no encounter, and then I think they said like one more, and then like that was it. Maybe they had gold subscription in there, but the idea is like, well, if there's, you know, I forget how many encounters there actually are, like 16 or something like that. If there's 16 encounters and 3 of them are not for fun, then like I think your definition of what is for fun is like a little bit crazy, which I sympathize with Mortog on. I think that is true. I'm fine with, you know, an Ornn item. It does shift up the game, but there's still, you know, so much skill expression in your Ornn artifact pick and what line you choose to play with that, as long as they're relatively balanced. Stuff like gold subscription just puts more gold. Oh yeah, there was definitely like scuttle puddles being for fun, which like it just inserts more resources into the game, but I don't think that necessarily like makes the balance bad. So yeah, I'm fine with encounters. Understand why some people might be you know, upset about it, but overall I think, you know, not so bad. All right, Chem-Baron is an interesting trait. Oh yeah, and they did say they're keeping you know, the opening encounters going forward next set. They're not going to go back to portals, which yeah, I mean, seems like the direction they're going in. But yeah, Chem-Baron is an interesting one. So this is their first shot at a loss streak trait that encourages you to stay in the line. You have to stay in Chem-Baron after cashing out Chem-Baron because you need to keep your Chem-Baron items, and because it buffs up your team, you're incentivized to even play more vertical Chem-Baron. I think this is a cool kind of like solution to the quote unquote like issue of loss streak traits, where, you know, it used to be for you know, my non-TFT boomers out there, used to be you'd have a loss streak trait where you would loss streak the entire game, you would hit your cash out, you'd get a bunch of items or gold or something, and then you'd full pivot your board out of the trait. With Chem-Baron, not so much anymore, and it's interesting to see what they talk about for next set. They say, just a few. Next set, we're trying another style of cash out trait. This one geared toward one high moment that'll require some big brain pivots. One high moment is interesting there. So I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what it means, but it's a cool thought. It says big brain pivots, so it makes me think that they're leaning, I don't know, will it be one where you want to like pivot some of your board but keep some of the units on your board? Will it be a full pivot? It seems like I think they liked the idea of Chem-Baron, where it's like you don't want to full pivot, because the problem with full pivoting is that you end up in a situation where like, okay, if I play, you know, Fortune the entire early game, 10 loss streak, and then cash out, and then just pivot into a strong meta board, but I'm a strong meta board with like a support anvil and an Ornn item or something, well then all of a sudden I'm up like a prismatic augment, but I'm just playing the standard board, which is really hard to balance, right? So I understand why they might be going in this direction. I guess we'll see. And I don't mind it. I think Chem-Baron, you know, there were definitely patches where it was unbalanced, but I think the spot that they've got it to by the end of the set is pretty reasonable, and there have been much less balanced ones in the history of TFT, so I don't mind it. All right. Okay, actually, I completely lied. There's like 3 more, so maybe we'll try to keep this video under 30 minutes. Well, okay. Multiple choice traits. They talk about Form Swapper. I think Form Swapper was pretty good. Not perfect. Definitely, like, you basically played Frontline Elise the entire set, which is like a bit of a miss, but definitely people swapped back and forth between backline and frontline Jace, especially after they figured out that kind of like issue with Jace where you ended up just basically always backlining him because the thing would cast anyway. And Elise, even as we got into the last patch, is something that you can play more as backline as well. So I think this was a cool trait. I want more traits like this that, you know, you can toggle and like choose different options for. I think that's good for TFT, and I think they did a pretty good job with it. They have an interesting section here on melee champion power scaling. The idea being you know, hitting a 3-star and even a 2-star for, they don't talk about 2-star, but I think this is the case for 1 to 2-star and 2 to 3-star for melee champions, is really transformational because it gives them more AD and HP, and melee champions really, really need, you know, HP and AD. You know, HP keeps them alive longer. So it's an interesting idea. Oh, Michael's like typing to Deepay, like giving him tips. That's kind of interesting. But yeah, like I guess you can't see it. He said, I think it's always Anomaly Draven, he said. But yeah, I mean, this is interesting. And the thing they said is very cryptic. They said, long term, we're going to have a solution for this problem on a systems level, but it's going to need a bit more time. I guess that might be that just like every champion, I don't think they're going to go back to every champion, because they used to, I believe, have every champion had their own kind of like star level scaling. And then, I mean, that's just a huge headache, but it does obviously give you more levers. I don't know. I wonder if they'll ever go back to something like that, or maybe some kind of different scaling for star levels. We'll see where that, you know, comes out. They said long term, it's going to need a bit more time. So maybe that'll be a big change for like the final set of the year, the set, what is that, 16? Maybe, we'll see. Okay, and then here's the last section that I care about, tanks and durability. And so we made it there, I guess. Tanks and durability. So their idea with this section is that durability and also to some degree RMR tanks that give themselves more durability, or RMR, are fundamentally kind of flawed in that it's really, really hard to make durability an effective stat, because if you lose 50% of your HP and then cast and you get durability, well, then you only have durability on that last 50% of your HP. Shielding tanks are a lot easier to balance. Healing tanks are a lot easier to balance, because if you heal for 500 HP, that's always just 500 HP. But the durability you get, that is dependent on how much HP you have left. You know, 50% durability on 1000 HP is a lot different from 50% durability on, you know, 100 HP. So yeah, and it's kind of interesting that, you know, the durability tanks this set, Leona and Nunu, basically sucked as tanks the entire set. You were never excited to itemize them. There's no one who was like really excited. I'm playing 3-star Nunu as my tank. I'm playing 3-star Leona as my tank. You know, that was never the case. It's interesting that the only durability tank that did work is Singed, but the reason why Singed worked is because you paired him with Renata, who would give him a big shield, and then he would have that shield to scale up the durability, which is funny. So they said we're gonna need to pay special attention to tanks that gain armor and MR or damage reduction to make sure they have ways to activate that early, or alternative hooks that keep them viable throughout the fight, which I mean I think is a very, very smart way to think about it, and I'm happy that they're thinking about that kind of stuff, because it matters, and it makes it hard. You know, it's bad when an entire class of tanks is not playable throughout the set. And then the last part, they talk about the Festival of Beast Revival. I can't talk about this at all because I didn't play it, so yeah. But yeah, honestly, I like a lot of their takeaways. I would say, just, you know, closing thoughts, I thought this was a fantastic set, balanced. When the game is so balanced that some people are saying the game is too balanced, I think the dev team has knocked it out of the park, and the only thing to think about is like, okay, you know, is there some other you know, way to do things where, you know, like, well, maybe we can. I mean, I don't want them to like make things unbalanced for the sake of them being unbalanced. So many TFT like conspiracy theorists for a long time have been like, they're just buffing. They want this, you know, comp to be super, super broken because they just want to shift things around and like shift up the meta. And like, no, like I really do believe that, you know, when they talk about how they're striving for perfect balance, like I believe that's real. You know, they do really want to strive for very good balance. It's just not the easiest thing to do, and you know, when they get to it in a spot like this, then people complain that the game's too balanced, which is hilarious. So honestly, I rate set 13 quite highly. I'm curious, I'm gonna do a poll. I just need to remember to do it, of you guys just asking yourselves, like, ask like how you rate set 13 as far as sets go, because I honestly think it was a fantastic set. I'm gonna be sad to see it go, but obviously excited for new sets as well. So hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, comment, subscribe, check out my okay, he died right here. Sorry, you know, I want you guys to see the end of the VOD, but also I want to end it. Comment down below. I want to know your thoughts about all this stuff and all the other stuff. Check out my Twitch, Metafy, all my other stuff, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.